In Session with Dr. Farid Holakouee.
Good afternoon. Welcome to In Session. I'm your host, Dr. Farid Holakouee. I'll be with you for the next 2 hours here on Radio Hamra. Studio number to call in 310-441-0555. I know for many people out there, we're not feeling so good these days. I feel it. Many people I talk to in therapy feel it, the ones that are Iranian, and just friends and family as well. Seeing what's happening in Iran, a lot of what we might see is delayed at times from previous days, and because of the internet blackout, which continues, and so many people are still disconnected from their families. We're seeing images of just horrific images of even children that are injured, which is heartbreaking. I saw a few days ago a young 3-year-old girl, I believe her name was Melina Asadi, who was killed. Not even, they were in the protests, they were just walking to a pharmacy, and she was shot by the gunfire from Iranian forces there, 3 years old, and just seeing her picture breaks. It's just so painful, so sad. And that's a picture we can see. There's many that we haven't seen the pictures of people, children who have been killed in recent days. And it's very sad to see. I try to remain hopeful. I still have that hope of what's to come, but it doesn't make these losses any easier to witness and to see. And it doesn't make them okay in any way and justifiable or something that we can just overlook. Every one of these deaths is not needed. And it's just very sad to see that, and to see that that's how things have been. And these people of Iran have been trying to just fight for their own freedom, which should be a basic human right. It is a basic human right, but they haven't been able to get that. And so we are still, of course, with them completely and supporting the people of Iran. You know, we know that these things very often take a long time, or take longer than you think. I'm thinking back to the first days of the protests just a few weeks ago, where it felt like this could be it, as in, like, you know, counting the days, or, you know, that week. And then when it doesn't happen, it can be disheartening. But I hope we'll hold on to hope, knowing that these things take time, take unexpected twists and turns. Like so much of progress, you don't know how close you are, and then one day you get there. You know, does it feel like a linear, that each day feels better than the last one, or each day you make clear progress that you can even see compared to the last one? Often a lot is happening that isn't visible until some big shift. So hopeful for that for sure, and hopeful that the Iranians, of course, in Iran, wishing them all the best, and our hearts are with them, and also hoping that the Iranians around the world will stay united, because the longer this goes on, the more chance there is for people to get fractured and start to, because of their frustrations, anger, take it out on each other. You know, you might think, oh, if everyone thought the way I did, it would have went like this. If everyone did what I did, we would be in a certain place, or, you know, things wouldn't be the way they are. And so we might actually start to infight and go against people that are really on the same side of things, on the right side of this situation. And that's really, really sad if that's to happen. So we have to be ready for that. That usually does happen when things prolong like this. When we're so hopeful that it doesn't work, we tend to look for a scapegoat. And of course, it's not a scapegoat, but the real person to blame or group to blame is the Iranian government, the Islamic regime, who's doing this to its people. So we want to make sure we don't turn our negative attention in the wrong direction and stay united through this. You know, I think many of us have felt disheartened at the lack of attention around the world to what's happening in Iran. And I think it feels like we're the victim of these very fast moving news cycles where for a while every day on American national news, one of the first, if not first stories was actually about Iran for at least some days. But now it seems a little bit less, not completely gone, but definitely less. And so we see how fast the news cycle moves, and we see how much, the news is just a reflection of the rest of society, and how our priorities are definitely not straight as a society globally, where the most important thing isn't making sure people have their basic human rights met around the world, putting attention on the people who are suffering or the biggest injustices. It's really about, for media, what sells, what gets attention, and for governments, what serves them the best, what serves their country the best, but even more, what serves them personally the best, which is really, really sad to see when we're not just talking about trying to get attention because it feels good or looks good, or that the consequences are minor to get that attention. It's literally life and death for many people, lots of suffering that goes on because maybe it's not popular to do so, or maybe it doesn't that person look good, so they don't do anything about it. And I think that's what Iranians around the world are feeling, of course, the Iranians inside the country as well. Not that any of us know exactly what's the right next step, but when things are said by world leaders like Trump saying certain things that he said, and now who knows, is he now waiting to attack at some time and getting prepared? I don't know, so I can't say what's going to happen, but the feeling of promises being made or encouragement or saying the support is there, and then people go and lose their lives on the street, and then it feels like nothing happens. It's very sad, very scary, very heartbreaking to see. And I'm generally a hopeful person. I think I want to say total optimist, but try to look at the bright side, or look for that in whatever ways as realistically as possible, but still the bright side in a real way. But I do think we have such a long way to go before the world gets to a place where the priorities are in the right place globally, because we're really, really far from that still, which is sad to see. You would think we would advance past some kind of more primitive ways of doing things, but such a focus on just serving ourselves, whatever that self is, still is part of how things work or really don't work. There's just so much suffering that happens in the world, and even so much of it I am not aware of. Something that becomes clear as soon as you hear about a new, not new, but new to you story of an injustice somewhere in the world. Today I was reading a bit about the Kurdish people in Syria, and how some things about what's going on there, with something like 3,000 ISIS soldiers or prisoners being released with the new government, and how they are essentially enacting ethnic cleansing against the Kurdish people there. And these are the same people who helped do, as I've seen it put many times, the dirty work to defeat ISIS or to push ISIS back. So they sacrificed so much, and then now when they are the ones who are the victims, we kind of forget that and don't support them. So yeah, it's a very sad state of affairs, I think, when we look at the world. And it's not that this is all brand new. I think for us Iranians, there's a focus on what's happening in Iran, which makes us aware of these things more, think about these things more, or see it in this way, where you see how much people helping or not helping really comes down less to the humanity of it and what's the right thing to do, and more about what is right for them, or will play out right for them politically or personally or financially. We often see the countries or areas that other countries get involved with have some resources that they want to get, and that's what happens. And actually Iran has been definitely had that too, with oil and things like that. So yeah, it's been a tough time following the news, seeing the images that we're seeing. We can share and help in the ways that we can, but it's very disheartening, and we can feel very powerless when you see suffering and feel like you can't do anything or wish you could do more. but there often isn't so much you can directly do from the outside. But we still have to do what we can do, and not to undermine what we can do, because it's not just sharing and things like that, which is important. But there's often more that we could do, including things like contacting politicians and representatives that you have to make sure that those who have a bit more power and influence also have their eyes on Iran and know that people care about this issue. And even there, of course, if they know you care, that matters, and that can be good. But really, it's more because they know you're a voter and they want to make sure they either get your vote or keep your vote. So it still comes down to that. So I know I said I'm an optimist, coming off very pessimistic, right? But it's just kind of the reality of things and how I'm seeing things. So yeah, that's kind of where my mind has been. And I know a lot of people I've talked to feel a lot heavier these days, and that's, I think, at some level to be expected. I of course want to give some thoughts on how to manage that and deal with that. But I do think that sometimes when things are sad, it's understandable to be a bit more sad those days, and we shouldn't always think, how do I just get rid of this feeling? How do I feel bad? When we get sick, you feel a bit not good. You might take some medicine that helps you heal, but you don't just take all kinds of medicine to make sure you don't feel any kind of pain or discomfort. So there's the world is sick, and we're seeing things that are understandably very sad and disheartening. So yeah, I don't want to give any kind of advice that says do this so you don't feel sad at all, or get rid of your pain or deny the pain of what's happening. I do think we can try to make sure to take care of ourselves and realize that even if we want to help and be helpful, realize that sometimes things we might do might not even be helpful to the people of Iran and might hurt us. So if you're watching just the same videos over and over again, like the literal same ones, that doesn't help the people of Iran. It just might make you feel worse, which doesn't help you. And also, it'll make it harder for you to keep helping because we get too overwhelmed. And if that happens, we give up. And for, I was thinking of the Mass Amini movement, 3 plus years ago, but I know for many Iranis, it's been 47 years of being sad about this. So I understand it's not it's definitely not a sprint, it's a marathon, and we have to keep pushing and fighting and realize that it's not over yet. We wish it was over in a good way, but it's also not over yet, as in positive outcomes are still there. And so many times we see that a revolution or a big change doesn't seem like it's going to happen at all, or the time has passed, and then it does. So I think we have to hold on to that hope and hold on to our support, especially for the people in Iran. And again, reiterate that the most important thing we could do is support them. And one of the best ways we can support them is to stay united together, to make sure we don't start going after each other or causing division. I think it's good to have different opinions, for sure, but almost anytime I posted something about Iran, I've gotten a lot of positive comments, or just people also saying they're sad about it, but also some kind of, I wouldn't say attacks, but negative messages too. And most of what I have posted, I don't know if it's like super controversial to most people, but even still, there's a lot of negativity that I probably receive a small dose compared to what many others receive. So I hope, yes, we can have different opinions. You can express disagreement. We need that too for healthy dialogue, to make sure we keep the best ideas at the forefront, but also be aware that attacking one another doesn't help the situation. There's no way that if we attack each other, it's going to help the people of Iran or help us get to a better place. So disagreement is okay, but disrespect is not okay and never helpful, and tearing each other down is not going to build anyone up. So let's hopefully keep those things in mind as this continues. As we get frustrated, we might want to take that frustration out on other people, which is something very human that we do, an unhealthy thing, but something that is very a natural tendency. But we can be better than that and not succumb to that natural tendency. All right, let's go to our first commercial break. We'll be right back. Welcome back. In the previous segment, I was talking about still, our focus on Iran, thinking of the people of Iran, hoping for a free Iran, and hoping that those of us outside of Iran can stay united for them. And I also mentioned this unfortunate reality that there is a lot of suffering going on in the world. Not a pleasant thing to talk about, I understand, but it's obviously much more unpleasant for those who experience it. So I don't think we can just ignore it because it doesn't feel good. If we want to be connected to this world, we have to be ready that we will be saddened by it. And if we consider our responsibility to make this world a better place, we have to know what's wrong with it in order to help, in order to make things more right. It's much easier not to care. It's a more comfortable place. It's something I think we all do at some level, ignoring, avoiding, denying that there are bad things going on in the world because it's unpleasant, as I was saying. I hate to even say it this way, but inconvenient. It sounds so privileged to say that, and it is, because people who are going through it, they have no choice but they can't ignore it. They're suffering from it and through it. So it's up to us to ask ourselves, well, what kind of a person do I want to be? What kind of a world citizen do I want to be? Do I want to be someone who's involved in trying to help make the world a better place, or do I want to just stay comfortable and not go there? So I hope we can all keep that in mind, that it's up to us how we want to engage with the world. And I would encourage all of us to be more connected and more involved and do what we can to help, even though it doesn't feel good. And this can get us into a tough place because it's like, well, what does it mean to help? How much is enough? Because as I was saying, unfortunately, there's no shortage of suffering and things that are going on in the world. And so the work is never going to be done. Certainly not done in my lifetime, I would say. So, what does that mean for me? What does that mean for us, and what we should do or, shouldn't do, or how we should handle these things? I definitely don't have some kind of prescription of this is the exact right amount of how much to care, how much to be involved in all of that. I know that's comforting to hear that, or it can be maybe even helpful. So I understand that. And maybe I'll share some of my own insights or perspectives on it, but I don't think it exists. A theme I've covered a lot on the show recently is certainty, because I've seen how much we yearn for certainty, understandably, to escape the uncertainty and the anxiety of being human and living with the uncertainties that are the reality of the human experience, and just like the experience of a living being. There's just a lot of uncertainty that we go through. We're just aware of it, or more aware of it than any other animal. So we deal with the anxiety that can come with that uncertainty. And so because of that, we yearn for certainty, whether it's from ourselves figuring out something that makes us feel more certain, trying to see a perspective that is more calming for us, or looking to others who will give us that certainty. So if I could tell you, I know, as long as you do 29 minutes a day of helping other people every day, you're a good person, and that's actually the most you could do, or the perfect way to handle things. I get that that'd be very comforting to have this prescription that if you believed it, would make you feel that for sure you're doing the right thing and doing it right. But I don't think that exists. I think it's good to listen to different people's perspectives, and of course to reflect on your own to come to some place of understanding that you want to operate from. But there isn't a type of certainty about these types of things, even though we would want that to be the case. So I don't have that answer, but just some thoughts on what makes sense, because this way, being human is not easy. It's a challenging thing of how to live life the right way, how to even try to figure out what does that mean to live life the right way, because we have a variety or differing obligations, wants, needs, responsibilities. There's all these different things that actually make it quite difficult. Even if you think about what it means to be a good person, sometimes we think of some qualities that we might admire or like, but what can get difficult is sometimes certain situations might make it where two positive qualities might feel like they're against one another. You want to be kind to someone, but you also want to be open, and finding that balance is not easy of how to, let's say, share with them something that's negative, where you don't want to withhold things, but you also are mindful of their feelings. So I actually think it's easy to say that living a life is easy, or here are the things to do, but it's very hard when you actually get into the world and into life and see that things aren't so cut and dried, and things are a lot more messy than that. And so we have all these different things we have to take care of, ourselves, other people, our own lives, our own homes, but also the world. And so we have to try to find a balance amongst all these things. And to me, this is actually one of the biggest challenges of life, is finding balance. That itself is a easy thing to say, but hard thing to accomplish. And for me, balance is, sometimes you think of it as something you just achieve, and then a state that's a final state. But really, balance and balancing, maybe is even a better way of putting it, is an active, ongoing process. So I think sometimes people think, okay, I'm going to find balance. Okay, if I do this for 2 hours, this for 1 hour, sleep for 8 hours, they make this balanced schedule. And I think that if they follow that religiously, follow that every day, they'll be living a balanced life, or they'll be always in balance. But the truth is that actually would not work, because what is required of us, what we're going through, what is going on around us might change. And if we still function in that kind of a way, we would be just clinging onto some rigidity to give us certainty, but not living, the good life or the right life. So let's say you're a parent of children and you say, okay, I sleep from this time to this time. That's how I make sure I keep balance, so I don't lose, my focus or things. Your kid wakes up in the middle of the night sick. What do? You just stay asleep because you have to make sure your life is in balance and you get, this amount of sleep every night, no matter what? No, of course not. I think anyone would recognize that's a crazy way to live life, and a very unethical one, and not meeting your responsibility. So you would have to take care of your child that night, and you will, be a bit out of balance with your sleep for that, next day, and who knows how long, to live a balanced life. So to me, we, even here, we try to find some simple rules to make us feel like once we get there, we can just turn off thinking or turn off reflecting, and just that's it. But that's not the case. It could be helpful to have some guide rails, or principles, and even, a schedule or routine can be helpful. But if it's overly too rigid, or if it's too flexible, either one of them could be problematic. So if you say I'm going to sleep 8 hours, but then, I really like this TV show, so I watched it till 4 a.m. and kept doing that, and then I did other things, that would be bad too. So it's finding that balance of even flexibility and rigidity, or flexibility and firmness when it comes to how you even do things, that's going to be important. And so this is why I don't think it makes sense to try to find some magic number or magic numbers of how much you have to care about things, how much time to put into things, because that doesn't make sense. Because again, you won't be the same every day, and the world is not the same around you every day, to think you can find some magic numbers to follow. Another comfort that we might seek, but it just isn't there. So I can't tell you how much you have to care about the world, or how much you're supposed to do, to help the world, or how you're supposed to do that, because I don't think those things are fixed in any way, or that anyone has answers to those questions that are, certainly right. Even if they say with certainty what they think, it's not true. And you'll see a lot of stuff out there about whatever the topic is. Okay, parenting, you only need to spend this much time with your kids, and that's enough. And it's comforting, because if you feel like this expert, whatever that means, says that this is enough, then you feel like, okay, then I know I'm doing it right. But it's just not there. So when it comes to helping the world, first, I mean, not everyone might think that that's actually your responsibility in any way. I think it is. I think especially if you are able to have enough to take care of yourself and be okay, then you definitely should focus on also helping other people and those around you, making the world a better place. So this is another reason why there isn't some fixed amount of time or ways of doing things, because everyone's life is different, and abilities are different. So if I said, oh, if you donate $20 to uh, charity every year, you're doing enough, let's say something like that. Well, there could be someone where they don't have that type of money to do that, where $20 actually is way too much for them. And there's other people where $20 is not even something they have to think about or they would realize is gone. So there isn't some magic number there, of what it would be like, because people's circumstances are different. How much you can help depends on how much you have to offer. Um, and so I think we all have that responsibility first to make sure we are okay. And then if there are people dependent on you, you have to make sure they are okay. That is a responsibility. So if you are a parent right now, I think you have to make sure, as much as you are paying attention to Iran and focusing on Iran, that you have a responsibility to still be there for your kids, be there in what you do for them, as far as logistics or tangible things, but also emotionally where you are at. Doesn't mean you have to fake a smile or pretend like you're not affected at all, but there is some degree that we have to make sure we can be there for our children, because they are dependent on us to take care of them, to be supports for them. And that is our primary responsibility, I would say. Again, even these things, I can understand people might have different perspectives on it, but to me, that one is more clear, that if you have children, you have to make sure you take care of them. Becoming a parent is a role that we choose to take on. Our kids don't choose to be born or to be our kids. And so we owe to them. There's that quote, you don't own your children, you owe your children. So we don't own them, we owe them to be responsible, to make sure they're okay, and we do what we're supposed to do and need to do as parents for them. So I do think we have to make sure we take care of ourselves enough to be there, while also doing what we can to help. So they're not mutually exclusive. But I think first and foremost, you have to take care of yourself. And then when you have people that are dependent on you, it's interesting how things change. Um, very clearly you feel this sense that your life doesn't just belong to you or isn't just for you. You have a child or children that you have to keep in mind. And in that way, I would say, your life isn't just yours. I would say at some level, it's not even when you're born, but especially when you have parents or become a parent. You have a responsibility to these children that only you can fulfill in the best way possible. You are the one that can do that. So you must make sure you do that. So that's the first thing, is you make sure you take care of yourself and your family, and especially people that are dependent on you. But then, you see what you can offer to the world. And what is tough, as I mentioned, that in my lifetime, likely, these big problems that we see around the world won't end. The suffering that is going on won't end. And that is always a difficult position to be in, or an uncomfortable one, when we want to help something or some issue or some problem, that our help or even our collective help likely won't lead to the end of the suffering or fixing that problem. It just doesn't feel good. That feeling of incompleteness doesn't feel good to us. If we are saying that the suffering is bad, and then we help and even leads to a reduction of that suffering, obviously that feels good at some level, but because the suffering is still happening, that will still feel bad too. So if there's 50,000 people suffering in some way, and we've saved half of them, so 25,000 people are no longer suffering, that's really, really good, and something to be celebrated or feel good about. At the same time, knowing that there's still 25,000 people suffering obviously will hurt, because if you got involved, it's because you cared about those people that were suffering. So this is the challenge that we all face when we try to be of service, helping in whatever way, helping the world in whatever way that we can, that we have to be ready to face this uphill battle that might have small wins and victories, even big ones in the sense of the impact it can have on individuals and groups of individuals, but one that won't be give us some sense of completion. There's some sense that we have fixed this problem completely and it's just gone. And that doesn't mean, like, let's say if there's a revolution in Iran, it won't feel like this huge completion. It will. That's a big change that has some very tangible impact. But what I mean is when we think of people suffering around the world from, let's say, food insecurity or starvation, or malnutrition, um, medical concerns, issues that are avoidable or curable, but we just don't get the medicines to the right people or preventative care, to those people who deserve it. People being killed by, their governments or other governments, wars, those things, those are going to continue. And we have to be ready that when we're fighting these battles, they are not battles that we likely will see the complete ends of. And that always feels a bit incomplete to us, to our brains. We just like the feeling of things being done. You go to clean the room and you finish cleaning it, or you're washing the dishes and you wash all of them. It's a good feeling. I know people talk about these things, and I'm not an expert on, let's say, a dopamine release or a rush of dopamine when you complete a task or get close to completing something. You do get a good feeling from finishing things. And so when we're trying to help the world, unfortunately, you're helping in a cause that likely you will never see the end of. But that should not discourage us, because something I've talked about often is to focus on responsibility rather than results when it comes to these things. And this is precisely why. If you focus on results, one, you might not even see any for some time, even if you're helping or doing something that's helpful. And two, even if you see some results, you're still going to see suffering that's going on. So the results aren't these completely satisfying feelings. There's always this sense that more can be done or more people are suffering, and that's not going to feel good. But I hope all of us can decide not to turn away, choose to stay focused on the suffering that is there and to do our part and do our responsibility, whatever that might be. In the next segment, I'll continue on this theme of looking at how we can help, or how we figure out this balance of helping while helping ourselves, because it's not an easy one, and one that I think we all have to struggle to find our way through. So let's go to another commercial break. We'll be right back. Welcome back. The previous segment, I was talking about trying to help the world, or being the person that wants to be helpful in this world, but also trying to recognize that there's a balance to be found there, or something that we have to figure out of how much do we help, how do we help, and really how do we also make sure we take care of ourselves. Because even if we want to be caring about the world and we are able to help in some way, if we don't take care of ourselves, there's only so much we can do. There's the cliche analogy, but it's an appropriate one. If you're on a plane and you're with a child, they always say, if the air masks fall down, make sure you put the air mask on yourself first before your child. And I think they say that understandably so, because they know most parents' first reaction is to make sure their kid is okay. And that's going to be the overwhelming drive of, okay, make sure my kid is okay first. But they realize that if you're trying to take care of your kid in that process, you pass out, well, then you're passing out and there's no one there to help your kid, and your child is left helpless. But if you help yourself first and you're okay, now you can take care of your child, or even children, or many people other than yourself. And so I think it is a good analogy to keep in mind that sometimes when we want to help other people, it's going to hurt. So I'm not saying do it in a way that has no pain or discomfort for you whatsoever. That doesn't make sense. But to realize that the stronger you make yourself, the more you can also help other people. So it's another balancing that, we have to make sure we're taken care of in a variety of ways to then actually take care of other people. But if you're suffering yourself, if I can't breathe myself, I can't help other people breathe and get their masks on. So that is an important thing to keep in mind. So if you're, watching the news stories or videos and things that are coming out and getting devastated by it and not sleeping over and over again, you won't even be able to help much in any way that you could, because you're going to be struggling yourself. So we want to stay informed, but we have to recognize that sometimes watching repeated videos or things won't help us. We might feel bad to look away, but we're not really doing much by just looking at certain things. So we keep our eyes on Iran and our focus on Iran, but that doesn't mean anytime you're just watching a video, you're definitely helping if you're watching the same video over and over again. I also know in a related way, I've heard of places where you can see more graphic types of videos. And here's another gray area, because it's not that we shouldn't watch anything that's painful to watch or hard to watch or might have blood in the video. But sometimes seeing things that are visually traumatic to see, like heads blown off or, really, really graphic things don't necessarily help us stay more involved. It almost can overwhelm us and make us check out of the situation. So I think it's important to see the pain and the suffering and the sadness and hear the stories, read the stories, hear the voices, all those things that are there, but realizing that sometimes we might think, well, I shouldn't look away, or if they're going through it, I can, at least see it. That's something that I can handle. But recognizing that sometimes some images don't actually help us get more involved. Seeing things that are very graphic and can be almost traumatizing actually make us more likely to check out rather than to check in and to stay engaged and stay involved. So something important to keep in mind. When we want to be helpful in general, another thing that comes to my mind is trying to realize why we're doing it. Something I've talked about a lot is our intentions. And the truth is, only you can know what your intentions are. And really, you can only know it if you go deeper and try to be real with yourself. But overall, I don't know why you do what you do, and you can't know why I do what I'm doing. You might try to piece it together. We always are trying to do that with everyone to see if they have good intentions, bad intentions, what are they trying to do. But at the end of the day, we still can't say we know for sure what someone's intentions are. And so when we are helping other people or trying to be helpful to other people, we know that, yes, there's pain, struggles, those things. But for most people, most of the time, there's also this really good feeling of, I feel like I'm doing the right thing. I feel like I'm doing a good thing. And not only that, I feel like people who will see me doing this will think I'm doing the right thing and a good thing, and will think I'm a good person because of that. And this is tough because these things aren't black and white. Sometimes people think, oh, if you feel good about it, then that means that's why you did it. And I don't think that's true. It's the same thing that happens when people get a gift and they, if you buy someone a gift and they say, oh my God, I love it, I'm so happy, you're obviously going to feel good about that. If you get the gift and they show no reaction, or if they just throw it in the trash, or if they say, I hate it, you're obviously going to have a feeling about that too. But sometimes people will say, oh, if you cared about their reaction, that means that you didn't do it with good intentions, or it wasn't really a genuine gift. You only did it to get approval or attention, or, be praised for it. And that doesn't have to be the case. You can genuinely buy a gift with good intentions, but you still, to me, it's actually a separate thing. You could have good intentions or bad intentions. That's one part. But then your reaction to their reaction or their response to the gift is also its own thing. And they're definitely connected at some level, but it's not that it's black or white or one way or the other. I think if you get someone a gift like, oh my God, I love it, and you see them wearing it or using it every day, of course, that feels nice. And if you get someone a gift and they say this is horrible, or they make fun of your gift, or they throw it away right in front of you, you obviously will feel something. And I don't think that means, oh, I don't think about it at all. I have no feeling about that. I feel something. So when we do good things, yes, it feels good. When we do things that we think look good, or even getting praise from other people will look good. But we want to be mindful of how much we let that praise be taken in too much, of like, okay, maybe I'm such a good person, and making sure our intention isn't to get that type of approval or, validation. Because it's something we do see online where people get so much feedback. Why aren't you posting? Why are you posting this? As I said, almost everything I've posted, I get some mostly positive. People, are, I think, supportive overall. But then some people, they might just disagree, which is also fine, but also some not as nice comments. So we are just, everyone's policing one another in real life and social life, but also in social media life. So we're all aware of how we're being, monitored positively, negatively by other people, and also what is looked upon favorably or unfavorably and all of that. And there is a lot of, and something I've mentioned recently is social media doesn't create new problems overall or tendencies, but it tends to amplify certain human tendencies. And so it's amplified this tendency of, oh, how do I look to other people? Where not only is it just the people that are around you that would visibly see you before, now it's, the masses. It could be literally millions of people that are seeing what you're doing and not doing. And now you're aware of how they're all judging you and how they're validating or invalidating you or thinking of you as good or bad. So a lot of what people do is performative online. They're aware that if I post this, if I say this, make a video, post a video, it's going to get a certain reaction from people. And you have to accept that that's going to happen. But we want to try to make sure we do it because we think it's the right thing and not because it'll make people think of us in the right way or see us in some kind of positive light or, favorably. Even this word woke, which I'm not an expert on the, what is it, etymology or the word, the creation of it. My understanding, it comes from stay woke, that phrase, which actually I think is better than just woke, because people will say that someone is woke as a noun, like you are woke or a woke person. Also has some negative connotations as well, for sure. But overall, that being woke means I am a person who is aware of things or cares about injustice or tries to make things right. And it's said almost like a label, like I am that. For many people, a positive label, one that they want to have. But the reason why I think stay woke is something more appropriate is that is a verb, that you must continue to stay vigilant and to stay woke and to keep trying to, keep your eyes open and don't close your eyes or put your eyes away, turn your eyes away from what is happening in the world, because it's very easy to do that. So rather than thinking, or even the word ally has a similar type function where some people think of ally as a verb, like I am an ally to this community or this group of people, and now I have that label, I have that status. But it really is more about allyship, or the verb of being an ally, and that you have to keep acting in that way. It's not just, oh, by the way, I'm an ally, so you can like me or you can know that I'm on your side. Where it's like, you have to show that through actions and continuous actions. It's not just something you earn that status and can retire, with that type of designation. You have to keep earning that. So when it comes to doing good things, we're of course going to be affected by how people see us and how they will label us. It's going to be there, but we want to try to downplay or minimize that when it comes to why we do what we do. Really try to think of, what do you think is the right thing to do? How would you like to be involved? Yes, you're going to care how people respond to it. That's human to care about it. But let's make sure that's not the reason why we are doing what we do and helping in the ways that we help, or maybe we're afraid to help in some ways because of how it might look. All of this is easier said than done. I'm definitely someone who is affected by all of these things as well. So I'm speaking to myself for sure as I say this, not just putting it out there, because I know how these things can feel so heavy and sometimes we're not sure what's even right or what's the right thing to do or what we're supposed to do about it. That can make us feel even more uneasy about how we get involved or don't get involved with certain things. And so related to that, going back to what I was saying about the negative judgments or statements that are out there, of course, keeping each other accountable does have value, and even calling people out when they're being harmful or hurtful or hateful in some way does have value. But we definitely are another amplification of a human tendency. There's such a strong preoccupation with thinking we tell each other what to do or what you're doing is wrong or what's wrong with you, or just judging one another about what we're doing. And I think there's lots of reasons for it. On Monday, I was talking about, I think it was this past Monday, but anyway, there's definitely a strong desire we have to feel superior. And because of that, we do lots of different things. But this is going to be one of those things, that we judge other people for what they do and not do because we think we're better than them. To judge already means you're looking from above. I can give a judgment upon you. And so it feels good to judge people. It's not good for us long term and overall, but it does feel good in the moment to judge others. So people like to do that. It can feel really good. But another reason why I think people judge so much is because, going back to uncertainty, because we're not quite sure 100% that what we're doing is right or we have all the right ideas, one of the ways we can deal with this uncertainty is to um, try to remove it completely and go to 100% certainty and then attack the other side because we're now so sure that we are right and they are wrong. That's a very comforting position to be in. Another way to put ourselves above others, of course, as well. So it's like, I am definitely right. I am definitely on the right side of things. I'm definitely the good person here. And you are this evil, bad, stupid person who's on the other side of things. It feels comforting, but we have to recognize it's a false comfort and a comfort that isn't helpful for sure to the other person, but just overall in general to the whole process of how things are going. And so that's another thing we can always try to keep in mind when we get feedback from people. It can be very important, we want to make sure we receive feedback, not just to let other people make our judgments for us, but we can get feedback that can help us see things that we can't see or we don't see, and that can be very helpful. But we always want to be mindful of who's giving the feedback and what does it seem like their intentions are. Again, we can't know for sure what someone's intentions are, but if someone is just blatantly attacking you, let's say in the comment section, it doesn't seem likely that they're genuinely trying to give you positive feedback, positivism that will help you, feedback that is beneficial, because that's not the way someone would do that. If they really want to help you, people don't do that. So clearly they're just trying to attack you, tear you down, and make themselves look good, because this is how strongly I view things. This is how clear I am. This is how much I'm on the right side of things, that I'm attacking you in this way. So I think it's important for us to try to do the right thing, but to recognize that right thing, the compass or that radar, the guide, is going to be coming from within ourselves rather than looking to other people to tell us what's right. We're all going to be impacted by what people say, how people judge us, what the public perception and opinions are. If you don't think you are, you just don't realize how you are, because we all are impacted by that. But we want to try to minimize how much we let those things make our decisions for us and try to do what's right from within ourselves rather than what feels right to other people, even though we might care about that. So let's go to another commercial break, and I'll continue on these themes after the break. We'll be right back. Welcome back. In the previous segment, I was talking about helping others try to do the right thing. And I was actually focusing specifically on in social media, but of course applies anywhere, of how we can be impacted by how others are viewing what we're doing and trying to look like good people. And sometimes we can be more focused on looking like good people than really being good people. And really, this is true of almost all human characteristics or just how we live our lives. We are so heavily impacted by how others see us that we often care more about looking a certain way than actually being those things. Most people will say, no, that's not me. I'm not like that at all. But I think the reality is recognizing we're all impacted by that. For all of us, this does play a part in how we live our lives and what we choose to do, choose not to do. So it's definitely there. I think if we actually try to avoid that it's there completely, or deny that it's there completely, I should say, we will be unaware of its impact and maybe are even more affected by it than we would let on or that we could be. So it's there. It's there for sure, but we can try to be mindful of going towards a more internal basis for how we make our decisions, or genuine basis, that it's more important for us to look, not to look good, but to do what's good or do what's right. I'm reminded of still one of my favorite titles of any of the books I've ever read, which is The Courage to be Disliked. I think it's such a powerful title in just a few words, because it doesn't say try to be disliked, which is some kind of, could be like a negative or rebellious kind of anti other people kind of a mindset, which isn't good. And it doesn't mean, you'll never be disliked or find a way to never be disliked. But the courage to be disliked means you do what you think is right, despite the fact that some people might not like it, they'll dislike it. And really, the truth be told, no matter what you do, some people won't like it, which is something to keep in mind, that you're never going to make everyone happy or everyone like you anyway. It shouldn't be the goal, but it's not even possible. So you might as well do what you think is right and you believe to be right. But yeah, I really love that title because it's a very powerful message or idea if we can internalize it. That I'm okay being disliked. I'm going to do what is right. Because getting feedback from other people is helpful, but it also will mislead us, and it will make our true north, or the thing that's pushing us, not be the right thing or a healthy thing. So we want to be mindful of what we do, how we do it, that the intention is coming from a place of doing what we think is the right thing to do, more than what looks right to other people or how other people will see us. But continuing on this theme of how do we find this balance of how to help or how much to help? As I was saying, there is no prescription of the exact right amount of how to do it. But I think for all of us, the focus should be on what do we think is our responsibility? What is my responsibility as a human being to other people in general, in specific situations? And it's not a clear or easy thing. Sometimes it might feel more clear. You have a cup of water in your hand and someone is very, very thirsty, and you can just give them give them the whole thing, or just give them some water and they feel okay. And again, you wouldn't be able to do that if you yourself were dying of thirst, going back to taking care of yourself. But you have this, extra, or at least extra in that moment, you can go get water later and you're okay without it. So you can give them that cup of water. But this is like a caricature of real life. I mean, how often is that going to ever happen? You might have some small moments like that, but really life is much more complicated than that. And the ways we help and can help are much more complicated. And the situations are much more complicated than one thirsty person. So, sometimes it'll feel like it's more clear what we can do, but oftentimes it's not clear. How much am I supposed to help? Even right now, how do I help the world when there are so many different people suffering? Even, yes, share things about Iran, but there are people suffering in other areas as well. So do you share, not share those things? It's tough because sometimes the feeling is, well, I want to make sure the attention is on Iran because I care about Iran and I want to make sure there is a focus there. And if maybe I don't keep that focus there, people will turn away. But there's other people that are suffering, legitimate people who are legitimately suffering, children, just individuals in general. Even if they're adults, we likely will say that that's not okay. And so what do you do? How do you find that? What does balance mean there? And I don't know. How can you post on every situation that's going on in the world? Unfortunately, you can't. There's just too many of them. You try to find the ones that you think are maybe affecting the most people, the ones that might for some reason strike a chord with you. Now, should that be the reason why you do it? Probably not, because it shouldn't be that it matters to you. And that's what's happening, obviously, with Iran. For Iranians, they care about it more than they would if it's another country. We have to realize that too. It doesn't make the suffering any worse. It just makes it feel closer to us. And that's always going to feel stronger. But if it was some other country, you probably would care less, if we're just being real. And that's what ends up happening. There's suffering happening in some other country. You might not speak about it or know much about it. Then, things are happening in Iran, and all of a sudden you can't believe that people don't know about it or don't pay attention. So that is a sad reality, but a reality, and one that we have to accept, that although here you might feel like you're the informed one or you're the one that cares more, there's other situations where all of us don't stay informed or become aware or care about it or get involved in some way. Just, I think, some genuine humility there that we have to accept and realize. When we're judging other people for not knowing about Iran, we have to also recognize that there's a lot of suffering that we don't know about or don't pay attention to. This doesn't mean don't try to push the message forward or even call out people who are not sharing or using their platform to help or spread information. I wouldn't attack them, but you can let them know we see you or we don't see you in that sense. But just recognizing that we all are uninformed about suffering that's going on in the world, in the sense that we don't know about all of it. So it's sad to say that, but I think that is a reality of current existence. So, what do you focus on? I can't tell you how much to focus on, but I think we have to make an effort to stay informed and stay connected. What I think does happen, as I was saying before, is news cycles move fast. Certain stories get more media attention. Every life is not treated as equal to every other life. I think that is a sad reality of the world as well, even within the same country or region, but globally, especially, you see this stark contrast that who do we pay attention to? What suffering is getting the coverage? And it's not just because it's the worst suffering or the biggest injustices that get the most attention. It's often a lot of other factors that play a part there. And I think it's really, really sad. And another way that I think we're very far from getting to what is possible for us as society, where the focus is on suffering and the focus on making sure we reduce that. But here we are, and all we can do is function in the current world that we're living in, actually trying to make it better, trying to make it get to that place where we focus on the right things. And so, how do you make the world focus on the right things? Well, you yourself make sure you focus on what is the right things, things that you think are most important. And going back to what I was saying before about responsibility over results, you focusing on the right things is not going to just change everything in the world. It's not going to make things, everyone now focus on those things that you think are right or the right types of things. But all you can do is make your impact. You can't do more than that, but you can do less. You want to try to make sure you don't do less, or you do the most that you can do. So it's a tough struggle when you try to care about this world, because, as I mentioned a few times today, you're going to have to accept that whatever I do, those problems will still exist. Or whatever I do, those problems won't disappear. Sometimes I've seen posts where, let's say it's athletes sharing a message, or before a game, they do something for racism or something. And then, you'll always see a comment under these types of situations or videos where someone says, and then racism was solved forever, sarcastically saying like, this made no difference. And now sometimes these things are very performative and they're, done in the wrong way. So I'm not saying every time it's done, like it's the right thing, but that type of comment and mindset is a very, I think, ill-minded one, because to think that any big issue is going to get solved by one action means you don't really understand the gravity or how significant and big these issues are. So there's no one issue that's going to, one action that'll solve racism forever. That just doesn't exist. And so if you're only going to act once you can do something that completely erases a problem forever, then you're never going to do anything. So it's a very easy thing just to say, like, oh, like let's say, like someone could post a video of feeding someone, like, oh, and there's no more starving people in the world. And it's like, yeah, that's not possible. No one can just do that with one action, or they're just going to take away some problem, huge problem in the world. But if we're focused on responsibility, then you just say, okay, I'm going to do what I think might be helpful about this. I'm going to do the actions that I know or feel can be helpful, knowing that I might not see any results from what I do. To me, that's actually the most mature way to approach these things, and why I think we have to detach ourselves from results is because of that. And it could sound kind of counterintuitive. Like, how could you not care about the results? Aren't you doing it because you want to see change? Which is true. You're obviously trying to help or trying to do your contribution because you see something bad going on, some suffering that's going on, some injustice that is going on, and you're trying to make things right. So you obviously do care about the results. I'm not saying to not care about them, because you definitely will. And if you see positive results, you should feel good about that. But what I'm saying is to try not to focus on the results, because that could be very disheartening. And often you don't see results. And even if you see good results, if the situation is big enough, you know that there's still a lot of suffering going on. So if that's the thing driving you, you often will lose motivation, inspiration, dedication over time, because you're going to see a lot of negative, not see a lot of positive. Even the positive you see won't feel absolute or, very, very good. And that will leave you feeling discouraged. If you know something is right, you just keep doing right. And you have faith that that will lead to positive outcomes overall. And you also know that the alternative of not doing the right thing or not helping when you can is not acceptable. So, at some level, you always put your head down and just keep doing the right thing. And of course, we look up to get feedback because you might see that what you're doing to help doesn't even help that much, or there's better ways to help. So this is not a black and white thing, but overall, just try to stay focused on what you can do and doing what's right in front of you. But don't just stay focused on those, results, or put that as the motivation. So even with what's happening in Iran, I know a lot of times it feels like, oh, but nothing happened, because like, let's say the revolution hasn't happened or the government is still in power there. First of all, that doesn't mean nothing has happened, because a lot happens beneath the surface before the big changes happen externally. But also that's going to mean that you're going to stop helping when what you do might be beneficial. What you're doing might actually help. And so this is true of Iran, but also true of anything that you're involved with. Even if your kid is struggling with something, sometimes, we can help them immediately and the problem can go away, or that kind of thing gets avoided there. Something hurts, and you're like, oh, there's, something is sticking into their leg, or something, is blocking their way, and you could remove that block for them. But most of the time when you're helping your kids, you don't see immediate results, just like if you're helping yourself. But if you know it's the right thing and it could be helpful, you just keep doing it. First of all, because you couldn't, feel good about not doing it, not helping them in some way, but also you have faith that over time it'll make a difference. So for all of us and everything that we do, I think it's important to focus on the responsibility of it, recognize that changes come slowly, especially big changes come very slow and not linear, in a linear fashion. All of a sudden it'll show up. And if you want to help the world, you have to be ready to focus on that and realize the results might be few and far between, but better to do the right thing and to fill your responsibility to the fullest degree, rather than regret down the line that why didn't I do more when I could do more. Let's go to another commercial break. We'll be right back. Welcome back. The focus today has been on trying to help the world make the world a better place through the right thing, trying to find the balance of what that looks like. And as I've been sharing throughout the show, recognizing that there is no easy prescription or easy way to do that, where we can feel that we found the balance, we found the right way. I was actually bringing up this analogy of balance, that it's not something you just achieve and it's final. And I didn't say the next part, which is that it's something that you have to keep on maintaining. Kind of like if you're balancing yourself walking, or let's say you're on a tightrope, you don't just say, oh, I have balance, it's done. You might feel balance for the moment, but you have to keep maintaining your balance. It's something you keep on keeping. So you take a step, and as you're taking that step, you have to get the feedback from the outside and from the inside, and then try to maintain that balance. But you can't feel that you're done. You have to keep yourself focused on it, or be aware of that. And when we lose sight of it, if we lose sight of trying to stay balanced, that's when we actually will fall off. I think that's true about all things in life and how we live our lives. That even if you try to find some rule that, okay, and I was saying before, this rigid schedule that you might have, that, oh, this is my balanced life where I have this many hours of this and that, and everything I need is in every day or even every week, that rigidity will make you fall, because you won't meet the needs of what's going on day to day, or as things change, evolve, or something needs more of your time that day or less of your time. If you think you found this easy solution, this prescription, you will fall off very quickly or at some point. So it can be good to be like, yes, I need 8 hours of sleep or 7 hours, whatever it might be, and I want to aim for that. But to think that you have to make sure it happens every single day, or else you're likely going to sacrifice other things. And so you're just clinging to a rule rather than doing things the right way or with the right intention. So you have to just try your best to realize that balance is even balance is balance in the sense that not every moment is going to be as balanced as the others, or every day will be as balanced, but overall try to maintain that balance however you can. So as I mentioned, there's a feedback from the inside and the outside that allows us to stay balanced, but we especially want to make sure we're paying attention internally to what is going on for us to keep things in that way. And even as families, if I could turn this to a discussion of family dynamics and how do we keep things balanced, it's really tough to be parents of a child. Even harder when you have more than one child. I don't have that luxury yet, or that experience yet, of having more than one child. Being a parent to one child has a lot of demands and challenges, but balance when you have more than one child becomes even harder, because it's not just about, okay, juggling the time of doing everything with more than one child, but once you have more than one child, there is this balancing of making sure they're both okay and they're both getting their needs met, and recognizing that their needs won't be exactly the same. And this goes back to just what I was saying before about the prescription, that you can't just say, okay, as long as I play for 29 minutes with both kids, they're both going to be okay, because they might have different needs. I mean, 29 minutes probably isn't enough for either of them, but they might need more or less based on who they are. I mean, if you have older kids, younger kids at different ages, it's a complicated thing. And this is why balance isn't some easy thing we can just fix and be done with. We have to keep paying attention to our surroundings and within ourselves to see what's going on. And so this is something I've worked with a lot of families on when they have multiple kids, how to figure things out, not just about balance, but how to make sure everyone is okay. And something that almost every parent I talk to recognizes is no two kids are exactly the same. So often people will say, we did this with our first kid and then we tried to do it with our second kid and it just didn't work. Or we had these challenges with our first kid and so we were ready to have them with the second kid and then we didn't. It just kind of worked itself out. We were prepared to do certain things that we didn't need to do. So realizing that every child is unique, which is of course a reality, but recognizing that because of that, it requires different things of you, can be really tough for parents to do, because we want to find this right way, as I've been talking about, some certainty. So we want to feel like, well, if I do this, it should work no matter what. But not every kid is going to feel the same way and respond the same way to the same types of behaviors. And even this comes to the point where parents might have done something with one kid and it worked, and then they feel like they have to do the same thing with the other kid, let's say their next child. And when it doesn't, they almost blame the child, like, well, what's wrong with you? This is the formula that works. And so the formula that worked for your first child might not necessarily work for your second, or, all the things we could say, it won't be that 100% of them are going to be the same. There's going to be some differences that will show itself. And so this is another aspect of parenting that sometimes people think, well, what's the best way to parent, or what's the right way to parent? Not realizing that there are interaction effects that are really important in how parenting plays out, or how things will play out in each family. So if you are, for example, a very anxious person and you give birth or have a baby that is less anxious by disposition, things might go a little bit better because they might handle your anxiety better than someone else might have. And that might make it feel like, okay, things are okay. Then you have another child that is, let's say, more anxious in their disposition, and all of a sudden your anxiety is triggering even more anxiety in them. So even you as a parent has been changed, even though we're not the same person day to day, let alone a few years apart. But even if you are being the same parent, because of your child being different than that other child that you had, there will be a difference in how they react. And now you might think, what's wrong with this kid? My kid is so anxious. But their anxiety isn't just from them. It's also that they are expressing or being impacted by your anxiety more than your other child was. And so this interaction is creating this very anxious child that we are now seeing. So it's not just the child and genetics, and it's not just you, it's the interaction of all those things that are playing out and playing its part. And this makes it very hard for parents to know, what do I do? How do I even know, going back to balance, how much to give my child what they need versus how much they might need some tough love, or, not even just tough love, but to face some of the discomforts, to grow through those discomforts. This is one of the lessons I've talked about before of pain that is damage versus pain that is growth. And pain that is damage, we want to try to eliminate or prevent or remove in whatever ways we can because it's just damaging. But pain that leads to growth, we actually want to encourage, support our kids through it, but make sure we don't get in the way of that or prevent that pain that actually leads to growth for them. And there isn't some label that it's easy to know. This pain leads to damage, this pain leads to growth. We have to think, we have to look at the situation. Even two kids, what they can handle might be different. What might be damaging to one child might not be to the other child, and they can handle it and grow through it. So we have to notice that or pay attention to it. Just like you might, have some weights that for one person they can carry and get stronger, for someone else it's actually going to hurt their body. The amount of weight is not something you can just like fix as a good or bad thing. As I'm saying this, I'm actually thinking of my own son, who's Keon is just, about 8.5 months old now. And there are these challenges even I'm having of figuring out when he's struggling to reach for something. He's playing on the floor, he's struggling to reach for something. How much do I let him struggle? And how much do I help him or prevent that struggle? And I don't think it is black and white, because on the one hand, I don't want to just, let's say, pick him up every time he's struggling, or just give him the toy he's reaching for before he, has to try to struggle to reach for it, because that's not good, because that one doesn't give him any experience of some small amounts of frustration, but also doesn't allow him to try to see what he can do or to even get stronger, because in trying to reach, he will practice certain things or move his body in certain ways. Or even in trying to reach, it might allow him to crawl or encourage him to crawl because he's trying to get to some object that is out of his reach. And so, as much as I don't like to see him get frustrated or see him want something that he can't have in that moment, I have to at times resist that urge to just instantly give him what he wants, or to pick him up or take him away from that situation, because I know that some of that is needed for him to grow physically and emotionally. And as I was saying, there's no, prescription there that I could say exactly do it this way or for this long, or until he makes this amount of noise or something. And I really myself trying to find my way through it. How do I help him grow while making sure I also don't want him to get some sense of helplessness or the sense of I can't do it, or too frustrated about it. And there isn't a clear black and white line there, or a clear red line that you're crossing. And people have different levels of patience for that. Someone might be able to tolerate it more than others in good ways. Someone might tolerate it for too long and let their child get too frustrated. So I feel this very strongly already in this very small, or there's other ways too, but these small ways of trying to help him grow, but not get hurt, but recognize that in his growth, there will be some, growing pains, and, even literally making him reach in ways that might be hard for him, but it actually helps him grow rather than interfere with his growth. So I've talked about these themes many times: growth and discomforts, and everyone knows that comfort zone is not good, but it doesn't mean that all pains are created equal or all pains are good things. And parents have to find this balance of figuring out how to help their kids stay healthily frustrated or healthy challenges, to help them grow and become the best version for themselves, to help them become what they even want to be, what feels better for them. And unfortunately, far too often in families, and especially Persian families, I've seen this tendency to do too much for our kids. I think that's, of course, these are generalizations. So we have all types of parents and people have all types of experiences. But if anything, what might be a bigger problem in the Persian and Iranian community, rather than doing not enough for our kids, is doing too much for our kids in ways that actually hinders their development, makes them dependent. And psychologically, as a parent, I mean, one, it doesn't feel good to see our children in some kind of pain or discomfort, so it makes us want to intervene and act. But there's another dimension to it that, usually this is functioning unconsciously, but we know that as long as our kids are dependent on us, they can't go away from us. And this is a comforting thing for most parents who the separation from their kids is the most painful thing, or is a very painful thing that they have to experience. I always use this analogy of the mama bird who is feeding her babies so that one day they can fly away from her. They can fly, which can be tough, but she knows that's what's best for them. Or maybe, obviously it's like instinctual. She's not maybe thinking it through. But that same principle applies to parents where, and I think Eric Fromm talks about this, he says it in maternal love, but to me it's parental love in general, this sense that in general, when we love something, we want to draw it closer to us. We love it in a way where it stays close to us. But as parents, we have to love our children in a way where they can go away from us. And this is a very hard thing, a bitter pill to swallow, but one that we have to accept as parents if we want to be the best parents that we can be, that my role isn't to keep my kids close and definitely not to keep them dependent on me. My role is to build a good relationship with them, but also build them up so they have the strength to actually go away from me and not to need me. And actually, in adulthood, the relationship between an adult child and their parents no longer should be one of need, but one of want and connection and desire of liking to be around each other and liking to be close with each other. The dependency of childhood that kept them close is no longer necessary and no longer healthy as they get older. But if we try to maintain that same dynamic, we hurt our kids especially, but also hurt us and our dynamic with them. But we definitely hurt our children and make them pay the price of living their own life just to make sure we feel okay. And even these things, when I'm talking about balance, there's a balance here. It's not like it's one day they're independent all of a sudden. They gain more independence in different ways as they get older, and ultimately they have some complete independence. And even there doesn't mean we don't help one another. Even adults, we can need help and support, so we're still there. But there isn't some sense of dependency that I can't do it or I can't meet my basic needs without you. But we see this in a lot of Iranian families where adult children adult children are still dependent on their parents to do many things for them. And again, it's a two-way street. Sometimes there's a comfort for the kids, but the parents also like that prospect of my child still needs me, so they can't go that far. But really, is that love? I would say it's not. It's coming more from dependency than genuine love and doing what's best for them. So we can see that balancing these various aspects of parenthood are not easy things whatsoever. When you have more than one child, trying to balance how to parent them both and to meet both of their needs, and also finding this balance of how do you give your kids healthy challenges and frustrations and discomforts and try to prevent the ones that are damaging and harmful for them. How do you balance your own feeling of wanting to stay close with your kids, but recognizing that to really help them, I have to help them become independent and to not need me rather than to need me. All of these things are easier said than done, but challenges that we all have to face as parents. Let's go to our last commercial break. We'll be right back. Welcome back. In this last segment, tying in a few of the themes that I talked about today, to begin with, was about Iran, and our hearts, minds, thoughts are on Iran and the people of Iran and hoping for a free Iran. And I was talking later about how do we help in this world, or how much do we help, and how do we find this balance between helping and taking care of ourselves, but also taking care of the world in whatever ways we can, or supporting, fighting injustices in whatever ways that we can. And then I was also talking about parenting. And one thing about the supporting injustices, I know I talked a lot about, like, let's say, sharing things online, and there's definitely that, but obviously there's much more that we could do than that, and we should recognize that. Sometimes when a situation is far away, or there might be limited things that we can do. Maybe one of the few things we can do is share things online, or make sure information is out there in some ways. But there's always things that we can also do in person, maybe not about one specific thing, but another unfortunate reality is there's almost always some injustices or some people suffering not too far from wherever you are. So I think it's important to, yes, share things. Also, I mentioned something about charity, so you can give money to different causes to help in that way, even from far away. But I do always think it's important that we think of how we can give our time to help other people. And not that we should just make, we volunteer somewhere, so that's how I help, and then the rest of my life is not about helping people. That can be definitely one way to give of your time in very direct ways. But to make sure your life focus is on helping other people. So that should include some things or maybe that are more routine, but also being open to helping in other ways as well. And following up on that theme of taking care of yourself, it's not just about, okay, make sure you take care of yourself so you're not, so emotionally depleted or physically depleted, not getting enough sleep. Like, you have to have that physical strength, that emotional, mental strength. But we also can build ourselves up as far as skills, education, even artistic abilities. We can do other things that, yes, will benefit us, but also could help us be better at helping or making more of an impact. So if you are, for example, a youth, a young person, and you want to help the people of Iran, you might then, let's say, go, not, like go into a profession or through your professional work, help people in Iran. I remember during the Masa Amini protests and movement, there's lots of people, for example, giving medical care or attention, or video conferences or calls to people in Iran, or psychologists giving psychological support or help to people in Iran. Artists, of course, doing things, this is people outside of Iran, of course, in Iran as well. So, we can also recognize that, you want to serve from your cup, but you can make a bigger and stronger cup of who you are, that you can help in better ways. And I think Iranians around the world have made us very proud, and of course in Iran, but around the world as well, of doing things, building themselves up to be of service or to be able to help in better ways. If you are a warrior, the stronger you are, the more you can do. If you're an intellectual warrior, the more you build up yourself. Even credentials makes a difference. If you are someone who makes some arguments, that might have one impact, but if you become a human rights lawyer and get educated and get the experience, then you can make even a bigger impact. So I want to add that in that conversation, or about that sense of how you can help others and taking care of yourself, but also building up yourself to be of more service, better service, stronger service to others, to the world. But the way I want to tie these things in for this last segment was, and it's a tough one because I don't, again, have some clear answers on it, but talking to your kids about what's happening in the world or what's happening in Iran. Because I think this is a challenge that a lot of parents face of, do I tell my kids at all? How much do I tell my kids? Do I let them see anything? How to approach that. And one very important note is a big factor here is the age of your child. And, what is age appropriate is very significant here. A very, very young child obviously is much more fragile and can handle much less than, let's say, a teenage child who maybe already is actually even informed about these things, especially if they're on social media. They sometimes are learning about things before we do because they're more connected to the internet and social media. So that's something that we have to, very much keep in mind, that how you talk about it, if you talk about it at all, is definitely, a big part of that's going to be the age of your child. And also, the maturity of your child. You might know that your child might be 8, but has the maturity of someone maybe slightly younger or slightly older, and that might impact how much or how you talk to them about things. I don't believe in shielding, our kids from everything that's negative or bad or that might make them sad. In general, that's not, I think, a healthy approach. But then also about the world. So I don't think you have to hide it completely. I don't think that's necessary. I think it's actually important to talk to them about things. and have conversations with them about what's going on in the world and what's happening, and so that they are aware of what's going on. And so again, in age appropriate ways, you can tell them about what is going on in Iran if that's something that you want to talk to them about. And also, I don't think you have to completely hide your feelings about what's going on. It is definitely a matter of degree, and again, depends on their age. But I've heard of some people saying, "Oh, I've been sad about Iran, but I don't want my kids to know it at all." And I don't think that's actually necessary. Um, to begin with, I hope you create a home where, well, the negative feelings or bad feelings, the ones that don't feel good, that we have space for that. That we as human beings will sometimes feel bad. That is very natural. We're going to have good days, bad days, good feelings, bad feelings, feelings that we like, feelings that we don't like or don't feel good. But all of them are acceptable in this home, and all of them are acceptable to talk about and to express. And that's something that you can definitely say, but it's much more show, not tell. That when your child is sad, if they're crying, if they're mad, how do you respond to those things will help them learn whether or not it's okay to feel those things and okay to feel those things in this home. And if I can go to you, mom or dad, when I'm feeling those things, or is there an expectation that we always pretend like we're okay, that we put those feelings away or hide them, or just try to act like they don't exist? So I think that's an important thing to make sure your kids understand, which, yes, will be hugely about how you respond to their feelings, but it also will be reflective of how you show or don't show your feelings. So I get it. We want to, be positive for our kids, play with them. And I think we have to bring that attention and energy most of the time. But I think it is okay to also show them that sometimes you might get sad. You pay attention to how much it's impacting them. It could feel overwhelming for them. And especially if they're younger, we have to be aware of that they might get too affected by it. But if you're showing them that it's in control, but something has made you sad or you're feeling a certain way, I think that's actually okay and quite healthy. I think too often parents think they have to hide all their bad feelings from their kids. And I don't think that models them something good or makes them feel comfortable to then express their own sad feelings or angry feelings to their parents. So I think that can be okay. You can let them not get sad because I know that people are being hurt there, that people want freedom and they're not getting their freedom. And they're still trying to fight for that and make that happen. So again, depending on the age of your child, how much you'll get into that might be different, but I don't think you have to hide completely what you're going through. But I think it's important to have these conversations from an early age of trying to express, that sometimes some people are, depending on whatever your station or situation in life is, but they might not have the comforts that we have. Or sometimes some people do bad things to people and these things happen. So we don't want to make them paranoid about the world or have this hugely pessimistic view, but realistically so they understand what is going on. Another thing is I've heard parents at times tell me, I want my kid to, care about the world or to realize like there's things going on in the world. So I think, once a year, once or so, we want to take them to, somewhere where there's a lot of people experiencing homelessness so they see that and then, then they'll know. And I don't like these kinds of things that sometimes it almost comes off like, you're just observing people to use them in a way that gives them, it kind of almost exploiting them. Like, let's just go look at the people suffering once a year so we know that's out there and come back. I don't even like some of the words that are coming to my mind and I won't say them, but it almost has this negative, very negative feeling for me. And more than that, it's that if we want our children to be anything, to feel anything, it can't just be a one day or once in a while kind of a thing. It has to be part of life or part of our experience. This doesn't mean we only talk about people suffering in the world or every day has to be focused on that. But we want to make the conversations part of our conversations, that those topics are part of the conversation. So we're talking about what's going on in the world. We're talking about how we want to help other people. And we might genuinely do that, take actions with them. Most kids are very compassionate. I know sometimes you say kids are mean and they can say mean things to each other. They can be very blunt and, tease and even bully each other. Those things, happen. But generally kids have, they're connected to their human compassion that when they see someone suffering, they want to help them, even from very young ages. You see, these types of experiments or studies they do with toddlers or babies. You see that they want to help someone who seems to be needing help in whatever small way, and helping them get something or handing them something. We do seem to have I think we can do good and bad. We all have good and evil within us, but we definitely have a tendency towards good, or caring about other people. And so you can talk to your kids and they likely will express that they think, oh, that's not good that someone was hurting, or I want to help the person that was hurting. And I think that's a wonderful thing to cultivate in your children, to be compassionate to all people, to care about all people. When I look at my son, Keon, I have a lot of hope that he will help the world become an even better place. And using his perspective and being from the next generation, I really think he can and will do that, as I hope for all kids. And children often can see, because they're being exposed, to all things new in the world that's new to them, see what's not right and try to make it more right. Like, well, it doesn't have to be this way. Whereas often as adults, we'll accept that this is just the way it is. So if we want to help them be good at that, we have to also help them understand what's going on in the world, have conversations. What do you think about this? And so it's not you have to give them lectures on every atrocity that's going on around the world, but I think it can be good to keep that part of how you educate them about the world. It's not just everything is good, everything is perfect, but there's also these things going on. What do you think about it? What should we do? And it could also be, not just people, animals. Sometimes they want to help volunteer at an animal shelter, help animals that are suffering in some way. And I think it's good to cultivate compassion in them. It's definitely there, but like anything, it's almost like a muscle that we can build up or keep in a weaker form. So when we're talking about Iran, yes, you want to be aware of how showing them videos. I don't think they need to see, especially if they're young children. No, they don't need to see anything that is showing violence or people that are injured or anything like that. That's too much for them to handle. But talking about what's going on, that's something that from a young age, children can handle and understand, as long as it's presented in ways that you see that they can handle. And as I was saying, there's no rubric of exactly what to say to what age. There are some things you want to keep in mind, as I'm saying, about violence and images that they see based on the age. But also you have to see how your child is, how they're handling it. So these are conversations. They're not lectures, or they're not just TED Talks that you're giving them about what's going on. You make it a conversation, and also you're paying attention to how they're dealing with it. And going back to the last segment, if you have two kids of different ages, you have to be aware of how you talk about it, and you might have to talk separately with them if they're as much the gap, or share whatever is age appropriate for the younger one with both of them, and then with the older one maybe have a little bit more discussion if you like, if that seems right, because you might want to keep some details or levels of things from a younger child. And you want to make sure you have the full type of conversation with your older child, so it's meeting them at their capacity. But I hope you won't be afraid to talk to them about what is going on, that they deserve to know, and it's good for them to know. That we don't want to just hide all the negative things in the world from them, that we want to keep them informed about the world, and we also want to cultivate their compassion and keep that part of who they are. I think most children can handle more than we think they can, and don't take that opportunity away from them. We're getting to the end of today's show, but of course, all of our hearts and feelings are still with the people of Iran. There's definitely a sadness that I felt from people that I've talked to this week. I feel like, we've seen less of what we thought was the positive and maybe more of the negative, but even what we see is not necessarily what's going on in Iran. We're only getting a small glimpse of it. And I think all we can do is try to stay hopeful, and importantly, stay unified in supporting them in whatever ways we can, to make sure we don't forget about Iran, that we don't forget about the people there, and to keep the attention on them as best as we can, and hope for revolution and hope for change very soon. That brings us to the end of today's show. A big thank you to Farid in the studio. You've been listening to In Session with Dr. Farid Holakouee. Zan Zendegi Azadi.